Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be listening to this episode of the Black and Blue podcast. I am your host, as always, Matthew McLaughlin, and we have a very special Veterans Day edition. We are recording this on Veterans Day. So, first of all, shout out to all of our veterans, all of our soldiers and troops overseas or here in the United States. You make an incredible sacrifice each and every day. So, thank you for that. I am here with the former captain of Boston College's varsity basketball team. He was a nominee for the Rhodes Scholarship while at Boston College, so pretty smart guy to say the least. He is the creator of Mike, the Ultimate Talking Sports Head character. He is now the author of one of the best sports books of the year, in my humble opinion, Old School Hoops. You can find it on Amazon. There's a plug for you. He is a member of the International Board and president of the USA region for FIMBA America, and the Tampa Bay Times named him one of Florida's most interesting figures in 2014, and a man who continues to hoop to this day because one, basketball is a love story for life, and two, Father Time can stick it, and we can always get old players to keep hooping no matter what. The one and only Mr. Jim Sweeney. Jim, thank you
Well,
for
that's a
coming on the
great
show.
introduction. Hope I can live up to the hype during our conversation today.
Well, I like to give my guests a little fluff. You got to fluff them up a little bit.
There you go.
So Jim, once again, thank you for coming on the show. How are you dealing with COVID, quarantine? You hanging in there?
Well, my wife and I are both COVID free. We are living in unprecedented times. Out of all the friends I have, only two had gotten it. One, it was, you know, not serious. I mean, COVID is serious, but in his personal situation, it wasn't. And another one of my basketball buddies spent 7 days in the hospital and he got discharged a couple of weeks ago. He's still groggy. He's still trying to get out of it and get through it. So
Yeah,
I'm fine. My wife is fine. Life is great.
yeah. I mean, as much as no one really wanted an outbreak, if there's any silver linings to a pandemic where everything shuts down, is you can appreciate the smaller things such as health. Family
True.
members are safe, and appreciate the smaller things.
But
So
without doubt, COVID has really impacted us as a couple, not health wise, but my wife is a public speaker. So the last time that she spoke, and that's what she does for a living, was in February. She's an international public speaker, travels, several times a year internationally to speak at conferences. And that was completely shut down. And as I help manage her, so as far as helping her get new gigs in the future, there's nothing. I mean, virtual conferences, yes, but as far as in-person appearances, no, not anything at all. And as far as my master's basketball, which I'm involved in, all of our tournaments in 2020 were totally scrubbed, and it seems like majority of the tournaments planned for 2021, in which I help organize teams, recruit players, and enter them into these tournaments, they're scrubbed also. So yes, it has impacted me, but thankfully not health wise.
all right, sounds good. So we're just gonna get right into your background a little bit, give some information for people who may not be aware of your story. You were born and raised in downtown Trenton, New Jersey. What were some of the first moments that you had that made you fall in love with sports, not just necessarily basketball alone?
Well, sports was all around you. I grew up right in the middle of the city, directly across the street from a middle school that had several basketball courts behind it, a baseball field. Guys were always playing, pickup basketball. They're playing touch football, playing basketball. They also had a big parking lot, so we played street hockey. So sports were always around. And, once I got older, I figured out that, hey, I wasn't the only guy that had just such this incredible passion for sports. There were so many other people out there. Then I started to go and expand my circle of influence and, would play in other parks and other gyms, and every opportunity I had, to go somewhere and play sports, specifically basketball, I took advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, were there any? I was kind of in the same way where sports were just all around me. Even in the early like 2010s when I was growing up. Me and my friends always loved playing basketball, that type of stuff. Picking up games, playing football, whatever we could do. Uh, what were some of your favorite pro teams growing up, for instance? Or did you have any favorite college teams? Like, was Boston College always on your radar as a kid, or did that come along later in life when you were going through the college application process?
It came along later in life. I grew up, and I still am. I'm going to be 63 in a little over a month, and I'm still a diehard Philadelphia sports fan. I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. We lived literally within walking distance. It was uh, a long walk, but literally within walking distance of the train station in Trenton. And I would go with my dad, sometimes with my uncles and my cousins. We'd get on the train. 45 minutes later, we'd be in downtown Philly. And I'm dating myself here because I'm considerably older than you, but we used to go regularly to Connie Mack Stadium. And at that time, the Phillies never sold out. So it was easy to buy a ticket, where some guy desperate to, get rid of tickets outside the stadium. I go to Flyers games. I'd go to 76er games, and I would go to Eagles. I'm a diehard Eagles fan. I still have an Eagles bobblehead. It's chipped, but it's in the back of my closet in a protective case.
As long as it's protected, hey. I
Yeah.
Philly sports, you once you really get into Philly sports, you're a Philly sports fan for life.
Yeah. I've lived
Uh,
in Florida 37 years, and I really don't follow any of the Tampa Bay teams. I live in Clearwater, Florida, which is the Tampa Bay area. I don't follow the Bucks, the Rays, or the Lightning. The Lightning just won the Stanley Cup.
yeah.
Thinking the Flyers weren't in it. So, hey, I'm not interested.
Hey, there's a bright spot. At least we were pretty competitive for the first time in what felt like years.
Yeah.
So obviously you go through high school playing sports. Did you always see yourself becoming a Division 1 athlete or playing basketball solely, or did you kind of think that that was your best opportunity to get an athletic scholarship at such a great school such as Boston College?
Well, I was very fortunate in high school. I went to a great school. Even though I lived in Trenton, I went to Lawrenceville Prep for 4 years. And sure, it was a great academic school, but they had tremendous sports teams in every sport. They were highly competitive, and they would always play against the best competition that they possibly could. And fortunately for me, I played soccer, baseball, and basketball. And all three of our teams that I played on in high school, we won multiple state championships. Now, that's in the prep division. It's not like there are 300 teams within our division in the state. There are only a few dozen. So I think that comes with a little bit of an asterisk. But I got a lot of exposure in high school. So my options when I was a senior was I could play soccer in college, baseball, or basketball. And the emphasis at Lawrenceville was always pushing their students toward the Ivy Leagues or to the Little Ivies. When I first started looking at schools, I would look at the Ivy League schools, and I'd look at the Little Ivies, which are like Williams, Amherst, Holy Cross, those type of schools. But it was kind of ironic is that one of the assistant coaches at Boston College came to see our team play when I was a senior, and he came to see one of my teammates who was fantastic. His name is Tony Trani, and he eventually went to Princeton, and he was Pete Carrill's #1 recruit. But when this guy from Boston College came to see Tony, he saw me play, and that started the recruiting process. So BC was one of several colleges that I was interested. Actually, my #1 school that I wanted to go to was Villanova. Living with the proximity, of Trenton to Philadelphia, I always followed the Big Five schools. And one of the many train rides that my dad and I would make from Trenton, New Jersey to Philadelphia was that we would go to the Palestra, and we would watch, college basketball there. I mean, the Palestra is like one of the greatest arenas in the history of basketball anywhere. It's so storied. And Villanova was always my favorite team. And I actually went to Villanova on a recruiting visit and met with, at the time, Raleigh Massimino was the coach. And he said, Jimmy, I don't have you on my list. He said, I have a couple guards coming in that I think would fit our program and our style, better than you. He was just a really gracious man. And he said, I know it's disappointing to you because we're your first choice, but you're not our first choice. He said, use it as motivation and make it propel you to be a better player. And the two players that he was recruiting over me were Rory Sparrow and Stuart Granger, and they both played in the NBA.
So it wasn't like he was overlooking you for some scrubs. So at least
No, and we beat Villanova several times when I was at BC. and I saw Coach Mass, and he kind of, put his arm around me. He said, "I think you got retribution, Swain." Yeah.
Yeah, Massimino is always one of those guys, those legendary Big East coaches at the time. Even before they were the Big East, we're going to get into that a little bit.
Sure.
Those are such great characters. That was going to lead into my next question was, you mentioned Holy Cross when you mentioned Villanova. When you're playing those teams, are you a little more pep in your step? You coming into the locker room a little more fired up to, get back at those teams?
No, I get ready to play all the time. I'm extremely competitive and I like to win. I mean, it's very gratifying when you beat a team like Villanova. I mean, they're great now. They're one of the top 5 teams in college basketball now, but back then they were top 20, top 25. So, I mean, anytime you play in college, it's a privilege, it's a thrill, and you have to get motivated for every game. And you don't want to have any regrets. You want to leave everything on the floor.
Yeah, definitely. So you go to Boston College. They're at this point, the Big East hasn't been formed yet. They're independent schools, especially those schools in the Northeast, really small Catholic schools. Did you ever find yourself as a student athlete just thinking like, man, if we could just get some coverage, like if we could just get some people to see our games, we could make a run at a tournament? Because, during your career, unfortunately, there were no NCAA tournament appearances for Boston College because
No,
they were so small.
the field was very limited.
Yeah, exactly. You have the big, like the Power Four conferences at that point out west. Did you ever find yourself as a student athlete saying like, man, like what do we got to do to like get into that tournament and finally get to the big dance?
I didn't, and it's probably because I just didn't have the perspective, or I didn't have the experience to know that there's this greater universe for basketball. I was very happy at BC. I was very happy with the schools that we played, the travel that we did, and it just never crossed my mind that, hey, we could be, on par with a UCLA or Duke or Michigan. I never thought that. Never thought that. But hey, I was just grateful to play. Like it was called the ECAC, East Coast Athletic Conference, that we were a part of before the Big East. And then in my final year, we were one of the charter members of the Big East and played in the Big East for 1 year.
Yeah, so obviously the Big East, you said senior year, you finally get into the Big East. Before that, BC Harvard, one of the most heated rivalries probably in sports at the time. Do you have any memorable stories from those games? I mean, they were moving those games into the old Boston Garden at that point. I mean, were there any memorable moments that you had during those games that, you could tell the audience that, maybe won't be incriminating or at least, maybe not R-rated?
Uh, During the summers or during the preseasons, either BC or BU was like the go-to place for pickup basketball. And before, the NCAA rules allowed you to start formally practicing as a team, Boston's got 60-something major colleges and universities, like within a 5 or 10 mile radius of the city. So at BC or at BU, it's like all the good players from all the good colleges that were in Boston would converge on one of those 2 places for pickup games. And that's when, a lot of rivalries had started, friendly rivalries, but guys that, from like the D2 schools or maybe the real small, D1 programs or the Ivy League schools like Harvard, they would want, obviously to compete against the Boston College or other larger schools because they wanted to prove their mettle. So a lot of, trash talking, smack was exchanged during those times, all in fun. But, it really hones you as a player that, that when you take the court against Stonehill or Tufts or BU or Harvard, which may not be considered nationally at that time on the same level as a Boston College or D1 programs, that guys were coming out after you. They were looking to take you down in a good way. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I'm meaning they want to beat you and they're going to give it everything they had.
Of course, it was competition at the end of the day.
Yes.
They just want to go out on the win, and the game's the game, the result's the result, and at the end of the day, nothing personal. So
sure, exactly.
Yeah. So for those who may not be aware, you were you got roped into the Boston College point shaving scandal, and you were featured in the Playing for the Mob 30 for 30. For listeners who may be tuning in, this is their first episode listening. Highly recommend you go back to my interview with Cayman Grant. She gives the whole breakdown of the scandal, what happened, that type of thing. But a key point in the 30 for 30 that I focused on, and I thought, maybe not the right time to hone in on it, was you said that you got the impression that head coach Tom Davis at the time was trying to not necessarily push you out of the team, but he was trying to find bigger named athletes, bigger recruits. Were there any moments specifically? I know I'm not asking you to talk poorly on Tom Davis. I'm sure he was just doing his job, trying to get new athletes, look at the long term for Boston College's team. But were there any specific moments that stood out to you during your time at Boston College to say, I don't know if that's the right recruit that we want to bring in. Is there something a little fishy going on? Did you ever have any of those moments?
Yes, we only have an hour on the show. Is that there are a number, and if you look at college athletics, it's all about the coach. In the pros, it's all about the player on the team. So, ironically, one of the places that I wanted to matriculate when I got out of Lawrenceville, I looked at Villanova, I looked at Dartmouth, I looked at Harvard, I looked at Princeton, and Lafayette was one of the stud teams of that time. They had the Tribuca brothers, both from New Jersey. They were high flyers, high scoring team. And I wanted to go to Lafayette. I had seen them play a couple times, in the Palestra and then at Madison Square Garden. I would take the train with my dad in the opposite direction. We'd go to New York instead of Philadelphia. And I was really attracted to Lafayette. And it was only like an hour and 15 minutes from our house. But Lafayette was not interested in me. And it was interesting that there's a place called the Hill School in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. They had a big prep school tournament back in 75 or 76. And it was maybe 16, I think, elite teams from the Northeast that played in it. And Gary Williams, the University of Maryland NCAA champion coach, who's now retired, he worked for Tom Davis at Lafayette. He was his assistant coach. And he came to see me, and I got MVP of the tournament, and I got a chance to speak with him afterwards within like the NCAA rules and guidelines. And I said, well, what do you think? Is there interest on your part? And he said, no. I mean, just like that, no. And similar story, there's some great people in college athletics, and Gary was another one of them, because he said, Jimmy, he says, we already got, two guys we feel like we're going to bring in that fit our program. You're a little late to us in the recruiting process. And I said, well, what's Tom Davis think? And he said, well, Tom Davis won't even look at you. And he doesn't think you could play at Lafayette. And I'm thinking, oh, man. So after my freshman year at Boston College, a guy by the name of Bob Zuffalato had recruited me. We didn't have a good year that year, and he got, let go. And Tom Davis was his replacement. And the first meeting I had with Dr. Tom Davis, he said, I realize you're a good student. You seem like a fine young man. He said, you couldn't play for me at Lafayette. You'll never be able to play for me at Boston College. Ouch.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure I'm not the only person on the planet, whether it's on an NCAA football team, basketball team, lacrosse team, soccer team, baseball team, that has had a conversation like that with a coach. And I know you were looking for examples. I got a lot of stinging examples, but I'll just let them, that's water under the bridge way downstream. I felt like I was the whipping boy on the team, looking, to get me to transfer, to give up a scholarship that other players would come in. And Boston College recruited other players, and they were excellent guards. But by those recruits that came in, I felt like, ironically, it helped me. It helped me develop my skill, make me even more motivated to want to be a better player. And as a result of those experiences, even though it was very difficult, to go through that, the lady that I'm married now to for almost 40 years, we met in 1977. She would come to the practices during my sophomore year, only to a point. And then she said, I'm not coming back anymore because of how much ridicule, you receive. And that's coaching. I'm looking at something today about Greg Marshall at Wichita State
Yes.
that was released for abusive behavior and talking badly to kids. I'm thinking, they're the only coaches I've known in my life. All of them would have lost their jobs. So
Yeah,
hopefully I
it's
answered your
definitely.
question.
No, you did. I mean, obviously, when a coach tells you will never play for me at Boston College, it's a
Yeah.
little bit of a sting to the ego, a little bit. But
Yes.
yeah, I totally understand that.
But ironically,
know,
he had never seen me play. And he made that comment. He had never seen me play. And he had told me that I was a soft kid because I went to a prep school. And because I was 5'11" and 7/8. I'm still not 6 feet. Like, that bugs me. I'm thinking,
I'm on the same boat as you. I'm with you in that.
But he had never seen me play, and he made an assumption because I was a kid that went to a prep school, I was going to be soft. It's just the opposite. I got to tone it back at times.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel now is definitely a different time. Coaches have to be much more careful with how they handle their players. But you talked about development of your skills. And one of the skills that popped out to me, I did some research, was your free throw shooting. Your free throw shooting from freshman to senior year was an incredible jump. You went from, I think, 66% freshman year to almost 86% senior year. Was that just hours of just reps after reps of just, I got to get this right, I got to get this form right? Because that's just, to me, that was just an insane jump.
Yeah. Well, thank you for recognizing that. Yeah, it was hours and hours in the gym. And it's kind of funny is that the guys that Davis had recruited to bring in that were supposed to supplant me, I became really good friends with them as teammates. And it was like Dwan Chandler, Michael Bennett, John Bagley, who had a very long NBA career. And those guys put the time and the work in the gym. And we would do it together. We'd have our own drills, even after practice. After practice, we go to the cafeteria, have dinner, and come back into the gym and just shoot for a while. And I think we all helped each other because we all pushed each other. But, it seems like I've always been a good shooter. That mark of like 60-something% free throws my freshman year, that's, I think, an aberration because I've always been a good shooter. And the older you get, the less athletic you become and the less stamina you have, you rely on your outside shooting. And I've become a really good shooter over the years, but I wish they had the 3-point line when I was in college because I could stroke it. And, Davis, and I do want to give Dr. Tom Davis credit. He was a phenomenal coach. I had issues with the way he spoke to me and other players, but that's on me. I mean, if you look at his record speaks for himself. And he was the guy that would put you in positions to make you excel. And in my case, it was as a ball handler, as a team leader, as a defender. And he would always tell me, he said, you're going to shoot a half dozen free throws a game. They're all going to be probably in the last couple of minutes of the game because the ball is going to be in your hand. So you need to be the best you can at being a good free throw shooter.
Yeah. And obviously now to kind of, take a sidetrack away from your Boston College career a little bit to the modern NBA, we're seeing guys like James Harden, who's putting up outrageous free throw numbers. We're seeing Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. He put up outrageous free throw numbers in like the double digits, sometimes even getting 20 free throws, just drawing contact. When you're watching those type of players, is there an art to just getting contact, especially now because NBA fans are torn on Harden? They think he just flops or, takes advantage of the rules in place. Do you admire that? Or do you, kind of say, hey, that's not necessarily the way I would draw a foul? Or do you just kind of admire it as an art all of its own that could be taken in different interpretations?
I prefer when guys take it to the hole hard and they initiate contact, which puts the defender in like a perilous position that they have to, reach or bump or grab or hold, and they get free throws out of that. I never liked, and like, even though I really liked Reggie Miller as a player, he used to take a jump shot and he used to kick his leg out. And they actually changed the rule. Instead of it being a foul on the defender, it became an offensive foul on Reggie Miller or other people that would do that. And James Harden, I think, does a little of that. I know that he likes to rake through when he's
Mhm.
got the ball. And then as soon as he feels some contact, he throws the ball up. I think that the NBA needs to take more of a stand on that. But I don't have to say so. This is just my opinion
No,
of a
it's
62-year-old
a
guy
couple
in
fans
Clearwater,
going back and
Florida.
forth.
Yeah. But I think that it needs to be a judgment call. Was he really going to shoot, or is he just taking advantage of a rule that needs to be modified? So that's my opinion on that.
Yeah, and if anyone's going to be willing to take up the crusade, it'll be Van Gundy, who absolutely has no fear and will tear apart the referees at any moment
Yes.
when he's calling games.
Yes.
So we have a leader in that cause. It's just two fans at this point. But
Yes.
so just to go back to your Boston College days, going back to the scandal, obviously, I'm sure it was a traumatic time for you, obviously, but
Oh, very.
one of the quotes, yes, absolutely. And we talked a little bit before the interview a couple days ago, and you brought up a good point that I would like to clarify on this podcast was that I said in my interview with Cayman Grant that Henry Hill is like a hero to me, and obviously I could see how that got taken out of context or can be taken out of context. And I would like to clarify that a Henry Hill-esque figure when I've just only been exposed to him as the guy from Goodfellas. That was my only experience with him. And I can understand from your perspective or other people's perspectives where this guy actually destroyed lives, taken lives before. That's obviously, I don't admire a killer, obviously. I just admire the fictional character that
Right.
Ray Liotta
I
played.
don't think he was ever implicated in any murders or like aggravated assaults, but he associated his entire world with people that could perpetrate those crimes.
Yes. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for all of our listeners who obviously I don't want to, put out the wrong image that I admire a criminal of his caliber or someone associated with that realm. But anyway.
Yeah, and I can understand where you're coming from, because if you watch the movie, I only watched the movie for the first time. I felt like I watched it ever since it's been out, because anywhere you went, to a bar, a restaurant, the airport, bits and pieces of the movie are playing. And I felt like I had already streamed them together and I didn't need to watch it. And then I watched it I think it was with my wife about a year ago. And I'm thinking, after we had the conversation the other day, Henry Hill, he comes across as a pretty neat character. He seems like he's got like Teflon. Nothing could stick to him. But eventually it did. And then in the world of organized crime, it always catches up with you. Always. At some time, from the least likely place, it's always gonna bite you.
Yeah, definitely. But one of the quotes in the 30 for 30, again, one of my favorite 30 for 30s, made that pretty well known on this podcast. It's been humbling to talk to Cayman Grant, who directed it. Talking to you even now is a really humbling experience for me.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
But one of the quotes you said was, Rick Kuhn, your teammate who kind of roped you and Ernie Cobb into the whole fix, was Rick Kuhn said you can make $2,500 a night, and you said in the documentary, $2,500 a night is a lot for a college kid. Obviously, it's a lot for pretty much
absolutely.
anyone. Do you have an opinion on college athletes, especially getting paid, especially when you see the NCAA racking up billions and billions of dollars in revenue pretty much every year from March Madness, Rose Bowl games, etc.? Do you have an opinion on that, or do you think that, I guess, it should be kind of talked about but not necessarily executed on right now, if that makes any sense?
Well, I already think they're getting paid. I mean, you go to like my alma mater, Boston College. That's a $70,000 a year tuition.
It's incredible.
I mean, with all the expenses after 4 years, if you're a parent and you want to send your kid to a university like that, you're probably looking $325 to $350. So there's an incredible value there. There's also an incredible value that you're going to eat well. You're going to be very fit. You're probably in many cases going to be mollycoddled because you're an athlete and they want you in the top shape. You're going to get tutors. You're going to get all kinds of counseling. You're going to get free food. Maybe if there's some type of a nominal supplement, yeah, I would be open to that type of payment. But I think what would happen is that there'd there would be a wedge that you would immediately put between the athletes and the rest of the people in the student body. And I think some people would embrace that and say, hey, well, these guys are breaking in the money for the university because of what they can do on a football field or a basketball field. But I think a majority of the people, there would be animosity. There would be jealousy.
No,
So I'm not on any NCAA board. That's my opinion.
No, exactly. It's all fan speculation at this point. There's people trying to get opinions out there. I do agree with you that I'm sure some animosity would be created because obviously to a student who is not familiar with a sport or athletics really, seeing a kid get paid just because he goes here and he plays a sport really well, I'm sure it could rub people the wrong way, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely.
But transitioning to your post-college career, you played overseas, which is the focus of your book, Old School Hoops. Your stories of, how you managed, really not even managed, just excelled and thrived. Overseas, Ernie Cobb talked about how it was so refreshing to play overseas. No one really knew him, and it was great to get away from all the media attention at the time. Did you feel that way as well? Did you think it was a really refreshing breath of fresh air and kind of a pause from, American life that can get a little hectic?
Actually, in my case, it was before I played overseas, before the scandal happened, or came to light in the media. So I had played briefly for one season in Northern Europe, and I came home. At that time, European basketball wasn't near as popular or as competitive, especially in the northern countries. I mean, Italy, Spain, France, Serbia, Croatia, the Balkan countries, they were really good. But in the Scandinavian countries where I was, they weren't as competitive. So I didn't return. So my book, though, Old School Hoops, Stories of an Aging Baller, my wife always told me, she said, yeah, you didn't have the career in Europe maybe that you would have hoped for or thought you were going to have. And she says, just give it some time. You never know what happens in life. And then fast forward the clock 20 something years, and I get invited to play in a Masters tournament. And a Masters is just a euphemism for veterans, for seniors. And I think it's very ironic that today is Veterans Day and you're talking to me about veterans basketball. So I got started when I was 45. So for the last 17 years, I've played in over 20 different countries in these Masters events, most of the time representing the United States. So maybe a dream that I had when I was a youth or a recent graduate from BC didn't come to fruition at that time. But I tell you what, I maximized the experience I've had over the last 17 years, playing what we call old school hoops.
Hey, nothing wrong with it.
No.
So for people who may not be aware of FIMBA and your work with FIMBA, can you kind of give an explanation or some insight into what you're doing with these Masters tournaments that you've been talking about in this episode, how you're trying to recruit new players, and how you're dealing with COVID, especially FIMBA as a whole?
Yeah, good questions. FIMBA, first of all, is an acronym for Federation International Masters Basketball. It's similar to FIBA, which is Federation International Basketball Association, but we're the senior level. We start for women 30 and older, and in men 35 and older. And all the age brackets go up in 5-year increments. In the same way, the bell curve in life where it starts, like you would not want to have an 11-year-old competing against a 16-year-old. The bell curve in life could also be, you don't want a 60-year-old competing against a 45-year-old because physically, fit-wise, they just can't. It's in 99% of the cases, it's physically impossible. So FIMBA is an organization that started in Argentina in 1991. Now it's grown to 47 different countries that all have their own individual country affiliations and federations. And I'm the head of the United States, and I also serve on the international board for FIMBA. I've been doing the FIMBA stuff since 2009. I've been involved in master sports since 2003. And what I do is I identify players, recruit really good players, no knuckleheads. We have a no knucklehead rule. They got to be a really good player and guys that, or even women that would get along on the team and not, create, some type of an issue or an incident if we're going to be traveling somewhere. And then I help organize the teams and I enter them into the FIMBA events. And FIMBA they've had 15 different world championships, 11 Pan American championships, 11 European championships, I think 9 Caribbean championships. What's next for us, or Asian championships and African championships. We're supposed to have a tournament. You had mentioned, how has COVID impacted us? We haven't had a tournament in a year, and it's crushing. We do have regular Zoom calls for all of the country representatives just to keep people, together. But this year, 2020, I was supposed to play in FIMBA events in Argentina in March, Malaga, Spain in June. I had an opportunity to play in Guadeloupe in the Caribbean Championship in August. And I also had invites to play in FIMBA sanctioned events, not the actual FIMBA events, in Serbia, Turkey, Scotland, and England. But all those things got scrubbed. And for the first 6 months of 2021, all of them got either pushed back or will eventually get scrubbed. So the FIMBA stuff it's like a worldwide brotherhood. I'd never had a brother growing up. I feel like I got hundreds of them now from all over the world because people are so attracted to these tournaments. And it is the best age equivalent competition you could find, but it's like the whole spirit, the like esprit de corps of the tournaments is beyond special.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure I rode in high school, and I went to a college preparatory school. Shout out LaSalle College High School. So as on the crew team, it felt like a melting pot of personalities and type of kids that we probably never would have interacted if we didn't row. And I see not necessarily the same thing, obviously, much bigger scale with FIMBA, but a similar type of brotherhood where teammates, a relationship with your teammates is unlike any other relationship that you can have. So I wanted to get can't talk today. So I wanted to get your opinion on the NBA bubble playoffs. Obviously, huge deal. The NBA pulled off a miraculous success with zero positive tests of COVID. Did you enjoy the playoffs? Would you like to see, I guess, something similar? Obviously, people want fans back, but what were some of your takeaways from the bubble watching it? Any players that stood out to you?
Yeah, I became a Miami Heat fan. As I told you earlier in the interview, I've always been a lifelong Philadelphia sports fan. And in Florida, I've never had a team, whether it's the Orlando Magic or the Jacksonville Jaguars or the Tampa Bay Bucks or Tampa Bay Rays or Lightning or Miami Dolphins. But now I'm a Miami Heat fan. I just love the way they played. Because I'm shorter in stature, I like small ball, but I also like very mobile bigs. And Bam Adebayo, I know he was an all-star. I think he's a perennial all-star. Jimmy Butler is just gutty. He's a leader. He can defend. He's tough, and he doesn't complain. He doesn't go through all the histrionics like a James Harden does or LeBron James. That bugs me. I like guys that just go out there and compete hard, and they show some emotion, but it's not exaggerated emotion. And the way the perimeter players can shoot, Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero and even Jay Crowder, I love watching them. I loved how they created mismatches, created space on the floor, kicked the ball out. And, everybody knew the Lakers were going to win just because they had superior talent. And my hat's off to the Lakers. But I became a Miami Heat fan, that's for sure. And I applaud the NBA for what they did. Ironically, our next FIMBA World Championship, which was supposed to be in 2021, is going to be in 2022 in the exact place where they have the bubble. And the players were staying in one of our host hotels on the Disney Resort. So I had a personal interest in seeing, how they handle things, because I'm one of the people that's going to be involved to a certain degree in the hosting of our 16th World Championship in 2022. I mean, it's not going to be on the level of the NBA. It's going to be a bunch of tortoise quick old guys running up and down the court eventually. But I just thought they did a fabulous job pulling the thing off.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible to watch. As for me, Butler, as a Sixers fan, hurt my heart a little bit to see him play so well and really made me question who was running the team. But, new chapter, new season, who knows? Yeah, big year for Florida sports. We had the Rays in the World Series. We had Miami, obviously. Tampa, the Buccaneers are finally picking up, even though they just lost to the Saints this past week.
Better word would be crushed by the Saints.
It was not pretty at all in the slightest. But are you going to become a Buccaneers fan at some point, or is your loyalty staying to the Eagles?
No, come on, you can't ask me a question like that.
I gotta ask, because right now the Eagles not looking their finest. I have faith in Carson Wentz. I think he's going to turn it around coming off of a bye week and put together some great games, especially as the offensive line gets healthier. But I had to ask.
So I haven't really watched the Eagles this year, but last year, they were playing either Sunday night or Monday night or whatever it was, or Thursday night. And my wife said to me, "Jimmy, you're going to watch your football game like it's my football game because your team is on." I don't have any other teams. I don't have a basketball team, a baseball team. I do like Liverpool in soccer, but I have a team that's the Eagles. I love the Eagles. And I know this is going to make me sound like I'm like this nut job, but before the game started, I had to go upstairs. I put on this green shirt that's got the bird on the front of it. And it's an Eagles shirt.
Hey,
and my wife sees me and she just rolls her eyes.
Hey, you're not an Eagles fan if you don't wear some gear. You got to support the team a little bit.
Exactly.
So what's your take on the Nick Foles versus Carson Wentz debate? Do you think that we should have kept Nick Foles, or do you think Wentz is the right guy to lead this team?
I'm not a Monday morning quarterback guy. I mean, sadly, Carson Wentz got hurt. Nick Foles stepped up. He flourished. And the Eagles, I mean, they didn't look to keep them because they thought that Wentz was going to be better after his. But I don't think it's all on Wentz. I think it's on the team too. So I'm not a woulda, coulda, shoulda type of guy. I hate involving myself in conversations, and I try not to because I always prove that it always proves that I'm wrong.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there you go.
So we talked about pretty much everything. I just want to wrap up this interview with a little segment I like to call Off the Dome. 5 lightning round questions. First thing that pops into your head: start, bench, or cut if you're playing 2-on-2. You're picking a partner. These players you get to pick from to really rotate in, I guess you could say. Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem.
You're going Kareem?
Yep.
Fair enough. I mean, I shouldn't say I saw Will play. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I've seen archival footage that looks like it belongs in the Smithsonian coming from my generation. But
but
Kareem
he was a freak of nature before his time. Now there's a number of guys similar. I'm not saying exactly like Will in athleticism and height and mobility, but I mean, come on, Kareem, the leading scorer in the history of the NBA. How many world championships? How many MVPs? He's my go-to guy. In my opinion, he's the GOAT. So that inflames conversation whenever I say it. Inflames conversation.
So do you have a favorite band or artist of all time?
Like Sam Cooke. Bring It On Home to Me. That's my favorite song. I'm old school. I'm not into rap or any of this other stuff that you got today.
I totally understand that. I was expecting Springsteen, to be honest with you, but as a New Jersey native, but maybe because my dad loves them. So I don't know.
Four Seasons. They're a New Jersey group also. So Four Seasons. And if you want to, I guess they're a group or a band. It would be them. That would be my choice. But my favorite single artist would be Sam Cooke. I love his songs, love his voice.
Good pick there. I'll have to listen to some of his music. But pork roll or Taylor ham?
Oh, pork roll. It was founded in Trenton, New Jersey. Pork roll.
It's a big debate. It's hotly contested. You should hear some of the debates that go up here at Penn State about pork roll versus Taylor ham.
You know, I guess this is a shameless plug for my book, but in my book, Old School Hoops, I talk about, as a result of Old School Hoops, the amazing destinations I've been to, the awesome people I've met, but the incredible food I've eaten. And every time, even though I live in Florida, when my parents' health were declining, I would go to New Jersey. I went 39 months in a row. And I talk about the Trenton triple bypass, which is pork roll with cheese and what else? Cheese. Oh man, and a pickle on a bun with ketchup. That's my favorite.
Interesting combination. Hey,
Yes.
if you're ever in Trenton, New Jersey, that's apparently the triple bypass. I'll have to try it next time I'm
But I
out
write
there.
about it. I have a little mini chapter. After we're off this call, I'll copy and paste it out of my book and I'll send it to you. It's about the history of pork roll from Trenton.
Yes. This is the quality content. Yes. I can't wait. I have your book on the way. It's just Amazon is just slow for some reason. But
oh wow, thank you.
Of course, happy to support.
And some of the net proceeds go to the rec center in my hometown of Trenton, New Jersey.
Hey, another reason to buy Old School Hoops for all of our listeners. Another reason. You're doing a good cause.
Yes, sir.
Which obviously Boston College has produced really only two decent quarterbacks in the NFL level. Did you like Doug Flutie or Matt Ryan more?
I'm a little guy, so I like Doug Flutie. But one of my college roommates, he's Matt Ryan's uncle. So when me and Johnny Locke and all these other guys, Mike Mayock, he's a Philadelphia guy. I don't know if you know who he is. When we get together at the Jersey Shore every summer, we just talk about all the BC greats. And you got to say Matt Ryan or Mike McClinchney. McClinchney is also Lockery's nephew. So, and I stir the pot and I say, I don't really get your sport. I don't get sports in which you only play one half the game and you don't play both sides of the ball. And I'm the only basketball player, so they go nuts on me. Yeah.
Of course. So you mentioned the Jersey Shore. What's your favorite Jersey Shore point?
Point Pleasant Beach. That's where my wife vacationed during the summer. I would actually ride my bike. This is God's honest truth. From Trenton, New Jersey to Point Pleasant Beach, 45 miles to go see her. And then I would get a ride back. Hey, we've been together for over 40 going on 44 years. So it was worth the pedaling.
Yeah, I would need a ride back after that. My legs would be completely shot after